PV systems being put up on the schools this year, or by the end of this year. And with regards to the LED schools, so this is a combination of the 1,000 Cooling Classrooms initiative that the governor has put forth. There are actually 33 schools that will be receiving air conditioning. We will be putting LEDs in 29 of those 33, as the other 4 have already been done by the DOE's maintenance crew itself. And then the additional that you see of the other 5, we have 2 that have already been completed. Those are full interior and exterior lighting, and we have 3 other schools also in the process. And the 5 microgrid studies, those are 3 on Maui, 2 on Hawaii Island. And we actually just recently got news that MECO, Maui Electric Company, just approved the standard interconnection agreement for the 3 schools on Maui. So we're able to move forward on that, which is actually really great news. The studies themselves have been completed, so now it's about going forward on finalizing design and executing awarding contracts. The stadium LEDs, what we've done here is there are a number of schools that have a high amount of usage. Again, when we talk about the lights that Perry was just talking about, while used only for a short period of time at night, largely for football and soccer games, they do draw a high amount of electricity, as well as a spike, if you will, called demand charge, that the schools then have to pay for the ensuing 11 months if it goes beyond a threshold that the school hadn't had previously. So these LED stadium lights are going to be dramatically dropping them down so that the schools won't be experiencing that, and with these we'll be able to roll that out to the remainder of the stadium schools. And I'll be spending a little bit more time, there's a couple of slides on the last item, the sustainable cooling model itself, which is, as Dan mentioned earlier, is Honowai. So what you see here on the left, and I won't read every single bullet point, but it gives you a very good idea of the type of work that has been done at Honowai. And we're in the process actually finishing up this month. So as was mentioned previously, we'll be starting the school with the air conditioning systems when the school starts in the beginning of August. And all those bullet points you see on the left under actions are all the different types of energy conservation measures. That's what the ECM stands for. So everything from what's called passive measures, such as the roofing insulation, down to things touching items beyond the classroom, such as the kitchen hood exhausts and the refrigeration. And there's a number of other things obviously in the classroom itself. And importantly are the last 2 bullet points before you get to the PV system in parentheses, the reach and educational engagement. Those 2 components are really what tie together that 4th pillar, or in many cases actually it's the 1st pillar, which is the educational offering of the Kahe program, so that it's truly tied to what is happening in the classroom by way of construction and energy savings to what is being taught in the classroom by way of standards aligned curriculum. And the PV system is there in parentheses because while it's not a part of the sustainable cooling measures, Honowai is one of the schools that it was already slated to be. It's one of those 74 schools that's going to be receiving PV. Again, to break down the numbers a little bit more as far as impacts are concerned, that's what the right-hand column is all about. And we took very specific data points. Again, that is not exaggeration of 5 million data points. We had over 300 electric circuits. So if you can imagine, when you open a panel and you see one individual circuit and there's multiple circuits in a given panel, we did that across the school. And over a period of time since last April, we've been measuring in increments of about every 12 to 15 minutes. So that's where you get your 5 million data points. So you can see over a very clear period of time where things happened, where they were before, where they were during construction, and where they were after construction. And what this amounts to is that over a year, after everything has been completed, you'll see about 100,000 kWh reduction from just the work that's been done there. And in percentages are the 2 below. And actually, Dan, we should probably forward to the next slide real quick. So when you're looking at this slide, I apologize, the greens are not as differentiated as I had hoped. But when you look at the left, that's the pre-data. So that's, you look at April 1st to about April, 15, 16. That's before any work was done. That's our baseline data points. What you see there are 5 large humps. Those are your weekdays. And then the 2 are the weekends, right? And that pattern consists throughout. The reason why you see a little bit of inconsistency right in the middle is that while some of the work was being done, certain things actually had to be shut off. So the data collectors themselves weren't picking up anything because they themselves need power to be able to measure. So what you're looking at is the top line in the upper left, which is about 60,000 kWh. And then you go down right below on the right under the 66%. That number over there is about 35,000. So that's 60 to 35. That's the 42% reduction you see. And that's coming just from the LEDs in the classroom, as well as the exterior around the buildings. And then when you look at the lower level on the left, which is around 15,000 or so, and then you drop it to the right, it's hovering about 6,000 or so. That's the 66% that happens at night. And you know, what Perry mentioned was very important, his 3 points on the lighting side. He talked about security. What was very interesting in this case is that we found that due to a number of mechanical things that change over time, the lighting timer on the night light didn't actually turn on until 10 p.m. So from a period when the sun set, and again that varied throughout the year, but roughly around 6 to 7:30 p.m., there was actually zero light at the school. And so there's one of the things that you're going to find from a lot of the work that comes from the Kahe program are things that may not necessarily have to do with just savings per se, but other issues that go beyond that are important to the school, such as security. So it's those two drops on the 42 and the 66, which average out to 51% if you go back to the previous slide. And so that's where you get that 51% reduction overall energy use from the lighting. And then when you look beyond that, again, what we're doing at the classrooms is making sure that we teach the teachers standards line curriculum that then they can pass on to the students themselves. So we've engaged Honowai, and we'll be doing so even more so in the new school year, specifically around lighting and other energy components of the Kahe program, which is why you have the 800 students there and the 150 faculty members. We can go on to the next one. And so for the PV side, and I think for those of the members of the Board of Education who may be new and the Kahe term has been heard, there may be a chance that you might have thought that the program was really just a PV program. And I just want to make sure that there is a lot of PV that is happening, to be sure, but it is not just a PV program in itself. The numbers on the left are cut off a little bit there, but what the numbers are meant to be are 81 HECO approved net energy metering photovoltaic systems, 81 system drawings submitted to the Department of Planning and Permitting. You have 74 schools, again some with 2 systems, and then that fourth number is 155 roofs that were upgraded. So as you see on the top 2 photos there, so not only is the school going to be receiving photovoltaics, hence savings in energy and real dollar savings with respect to the utility budget, but in the process they're also going to be getting upgraded roofs. So those are costs that would have been borne by the DOE throughout its regular maintenance cycle anyways, and that's being done together with this. So you'll see in the parentheses there next to the 155 roofs, there's 78 cool roofs. That is the white coating, the reflective coating that goes on, that is essentially another layer, another roofing system that goes on, and 50 entire new tear-off re-roofs. Now those 2 numbers obviously don't add up to 155. The remaining 27 were essentially repairs to the existing roofs, which were largely intact and didn't need a whole lot more of additional work. And the last is, and that number that cut off at the bottom is currently, as we stand right now, there are 9 of the 74 schools have their system switched on. There's a lot of work that's been gone through the process to get it to where it's at right now, and there's a lot of construction currently happening. There are just a number of items that need to happen before the switch can actually be turned on and the school can be producing its own electricity. And so these are some of the challenges as far as where we stand and where we look to go forward. Is what we had happen last October was the NEM program, the Net Energy Metering Program, came to an end. And there was a 24-month period, hence to October 2017, where they had their current system or current program put into place. What happens after October 2017 is still not entirely clear. And the reason why this is a challenge is because in order to get the PV systems to produce electricity and the benefit to be fully granted to the DOE, it has to take into consideration investment tax credits. Because the DOE doesn't pay taxes, you want to have a third-party financier maximize those tax credits and be able to pass on some of those savings to the DOE. And without the certainty of what the next program is going to look like, it's a bit difficult, if you will, to get the financiers on solid footing to be able to invest their money going forward. So it's a little bit of a wait and see on the next program, again, which will come out in October 2017. And we had internally, what we do with the DOE is an internal, the leadership of the facilities branch, as well as our team, and talking about where we are at, what are the challenges ahead, how do we adjust to the externalities as they change, such as the ending of the NEM program, and reset priorities. PV was a priority from the very beginning, which is why I think the Kahe program was seen to be a PV program from the get-go. But we did that strategically because we wanted to get in as many systems as possible before the NEM program came to an end. That obviously is being reshuffled, and so the efficiency side and really looking at the combination of opportunities that exist around the microgrid are what is now becoming the top priorities, which is why it's really great news to hear about the 3 that were approved by MECO from MOE. And again, the other 2 that are hopefully going to get approved by HELCO relatively soon. And our schedule as we have right now, this is actually jumping down to the 4th bullet point of the finishing the build out of the current NEMs, or net energy metering systems. We're in the process right now of having those done. They are all on Oahu, and they are across the 4 districts on this island. And we're also doing the Honolulu model, the sustainable cooling model, and applying it to 2 other schools with the opportunity to go beyond that. Again, all making sure that it is financially sustainable as well as highly efficient. And I guess, Dan, if you want to talk more a little bit about as far as the line item requests for microgrids.
One of the strategies, obviously legislative options, but we're looking at, particularly for the microgrids, it does take upfront capital to put in a system like that that has storage capability and whatnot. In our budget request this year for our CIP side, we plan on basically singling those out and making those some line item requests. There's a lot of attention on microgrids. There was legislation last year that turned into law saying we will be pursuing microgrids, and so we have a commitment, we have to do it. So again, to try and get those appropriations, we are anticipating going in with some line item requests for that. So Optera is working on, again, estimating that for us so we have an idea as to what our request needs to be, but you can anticipate seeing that in our CIP budget request. Do you have anything else, Brenda? I'll tell you what, with that, we'll open it up for specific questions.
The 81 approved systems, we've implemented, I guess you installed 9 systems thus far. So the balance of the systems, over what period of time you're looking at?
Yes. So the 9 systems are the ones that actually have been flipped on. We're actually already in construction of about 41 or so. Yeah.
So when does that
So,
41 get
yeah.
flipped on?
So our projection is to have them constructed, and this might go into a little bit more detail, but construction completion is separate from flipping the switch. There are 2 major milestones that we need to achieve. So after completion of construction, is I need to get the permit closed out by the Department of Planning and Permitting, and it's after that point where HECO comes in and does what's called the witness verification test. And then they switch out the meter. Once the meter is switched out, then we can flip the switch.
So 41 sometime during this school year?
Yes, we certainly hope so. Again, we can't control the timeline on the latter milestones, but from a construction.
What about the other 31?
Yes. So construction-wise, our goal is to have them completed this year.
All 72 this year?
Correct.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? If there are none, thank you very much. Thank you. Good presentation. Okay. We have a 3rd presentation from Dan Carlson today. It's the update on the Jacobs study, the facility inventory and assessment capacity study that the department has been working on.
Great. Greg, if you'll come. So back in August of 2013, and actually let me start this by saying when I took the job about 20 months ago, I walked in, I asked, hey, where's a list of our assets, or how do we know what our real estate assets are in the DOE? I was literally handed a PDF with a spreadsheet on it that was probably from the 90s, and that is basically how we were tracking what facilities we have within the DOE. And as you're going to see, obviously it's huge. Well before the time I was here, again, the folks in facilities development branch knew that was an issue, and I was glad to hear that we were well on our way to establishing that. So this is a study that back in August of 2013 was awarded. Jacobs is a national contractor, obviously, that in the building industry who's very well respected. So we basically, through the use of Jacobs, asked them to go in and do an assessment of all of our facilities across the Department of Education. And I would say, and I'll just kind of talk to the strategic part, and then I'm going to turn it over here to Greg Tanaka. He's one of our engineers in our facilities development branch who's really been the project manager for this project. But I think the so what to this whole thing is the fact that we finally have a 21st century we'll have a 21st century system in which we will know what facilities we have, what the condition of the facilities are, and it will be in a data set and data capable of doing numerous different ways of comparisons so that we can make smart strategic choices on the way forward and how the DOE is, again, building out and how we plan on building in the future. So that's where we're getting to, and I'll probably tie it up at the end here, but I'm going to let Craig kind of take you through some of the details of this brief.
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chairman, members of the board. Just wanted to go through this presentation on what's going on with the Jacobs contract and their assessment. These are the topics that we'll be going over this afternoon. The Jacobs contract is going to be, it's collected a bunch of data, and the first thing that what we're trying to do first is we're trying to do a needs assessment. We're inventorying all our facilities, doing a space inventory as well as a condition assessment, considering school enrollments, the benchmarking it against our ed specs, and with the benchmarking against our ed specs, that'll determine what the deficiencies are, where the gaps are, and how to address, and also give us an idea of how we can start addressing those gaps. I think I want to emphasize the importance on why we're doing this, and it's all to make informed operational and capital improvement decisions. Like, for example, an operational decision might be maybe the school is overcrowded and there's a determination of if you need to go multi-track or not, for example, or maybe how the staff is being spaced out throughout the school, where the teachers are, where the administration staff is. That's an operational thing. Capital decisions, the needs assessment could determine that this school has a very old cafeteria, it's falling apart, it needs a new cafeteria, and at the same time we need to upgrade it to meet today's standards because it's undersized as well. Fostering equity, I think it's important. I think it's obvious that we have schools nowadays that look like Old Kelly Elementary, and then we want to make sure that we can provide upgrades to other schools, like say Aina Haina Elementary, to at least have a closer playing field so that all the students have equal opportunities to the same programs as well as, just to the programs. So Jacobs went through a process to collect the data, generally in 3 phases: assessment, preparation, field assessments, and analyzing the data. The first step was to collect all our as-builts of all our buildings at all our schools. And we're talking about at least 4,400 buildings over the 261 schools. So they had to collect these as-builts because the goal was to be able to, in order to determine how big the spaces were so that we could compare them to our benchmark, our standard today. We had to know how big the buildings were, who was using the spaces, and also the enrollment, how many kids were in there. After they collected all the as-builts, they loaded them up on an iPad and walked through every single building of every single school, all 4,400 plus of them. Did data measurements to verify the paint, what we call the paint-to-paint measurements within that space. So, many buildings have been modified over time, so we had to verify all the spaces. And it would also meet with the school to find out who is using the space, how it's being used, etc. There are actually a bunch of buildings that we couldn't even find as-built on because either buildings were very old, or in the transfer from the county, there were no drawings. So they had to draw those from scratch. So once they collected all the data in the field, then they put them on AutoCAD, computer-aided drafting. On the right-hand side, you can see that the goal is to, we had a campus map and kind of scale it so that when you go into each building would be not only in the correct orientation, but it will be scaled to what it actually is. And you can see the development further, the goal being a geocoded GIS database, a facility dashboard that we're trying to develop with a second separate contract with Esri. And so what Jacobs did was Jacobs provided all the site plans as well as the floor plans of every building, and using geocoded GIS technology, we're able to put it on this database. So just to give you an idea, for example, like I think a lot of us are familiar with Google Earth. So as you go into Google Earth, you zoom in, get closer and get closer, and at some point the goal is to be able to zoom in on a school such as this photo here to see what each space looks like, how each space is used, as well as the square footage. And the color codings will help us determine like how things are spaced out within the school. Like for example, maybe all the purple would represent classrooms, and all the blue might represent maybe some kind of support space, or green might represent the cafeteria, etc. So this would give a good graphical representation of what's going on there. So let's get to the meat of the some of the data that they collected, and we'll go over an example of what the project will deliver. As an overview, we're looking at 20.7 million square feet of interior space, 261 schools, which include conversion charter schools, Hawaiian language immersion program, as well as School for Deaf and Blind. So all 261 schools over all the islands. 4,400 plus buildings. Interestingly enough, we have 7.4% of our square footage in portables. We have 1,800 plus portables statewide. 11%, we actually have 11% of our schools have 20% of their space in portables, more than 20% of their space. Average school age, average building age, weighted by square foot, and we have a bunch of old buildings as well. Getting a little deeper into the numbers, looking at it by the type of school, elementary, middle, high school, and a combination school. Combination school will be a school like Kahuku High and Intermediate, or another one would be Lanai Elementary and High School. So when you break it down by these numbers, by the different schools, I think there's a few things that stand out here. We have, as you can see, by the average square foot per school, our average elementary size is about 52,000 square feet. I would like to say that for an elementary school of 600 to 700 enrollment, the size should be closer to 74. And we have many schools that are 600 to 700 enrollment, so generally that's a low number. So our elementary schools are pretty undersized. Middle schools are closer to what the standard is today, and high schools pretty much meets the standard. And combination schools, there's really no standard for combination schools, so we'd have to look at those individually. Another thing that I'd like to point out is the third column from the right. There's a percentage in old or beyond expected life age profile. So we have, every building has a life expectancy, and generally for buildings that are made out of concrete, such as this building that we're in today, the life expectancy is 75 years. And for a wooden building, we're looking at 50 years. So when we look at we categorize an old building as the last 1/3 of that life. So for concrete, it would be 50 to 75 years, wood about 37 to 50. And beyond expected life is beyond that. So we're still using a building, concrete building that's over 75 years old. So as you can see by these numbers, we have 45% of our square footage in elementaries that are in old or beyond expected life, as well as 40% of middle and 37% of high schools. Average statewide is about 41%. So we've got a lot of old buildings that we're using. These are the overall numbers looked at a different way. It's broken down by districts. So I think I'd like to just point out a few things. One of the things is the colorful column right in the middle shows the average year by square footage. So I know it's hard to see, but the top one, Honolulu District, I think we all know is the oldest district. The average age per square foot is 1960. And the youngest district is Leeward. The average age being 1981. So what this would tell us is that all the old buildings are in the Honolulu district. There's a lot of old buildings, and perhaps that would be a district where we would have to start rebuilding buildings to meet today's standards. This page kind of summarizes the standards that we're benchmarking against. The standards that we use are the educational specifications, which are dated 2008 for elementary and 2006 for middle and high schools. So we've been pretty much building our schools to the same standards for the last 10 years, 8 to 10 years. And this study will not only compare today's facilities to those standards, it'll also which includes looking at today's enrollment, but it'll also look at the future enrollment as well, which was 2019 and 2020. So at least we can project deficiencies and see whether or not those deficiencies, how those compare to enrollment of today. These are the different types of spaces that the project is looking at. We're focusing on general classrooms as well as support facilities. I wanted to focus on one example just to give you a good idea of what this project will tell us and how it'll really help us plan for our capital improvement projects. So the example I'm going to go over has to do with admin buildings. So right here is a list of 15 schools that have very deficient admin spaces. When you compare what's there now, today, to our EdSpec standard of how big an admin should be. So, I mean, Lokelani Intermediate is a high. We all know that Lokelani Intermediate admin is actually portable. But I wanted to focus on two schools. So one of them is Pahoa Elementary. Pahoa Elementary is the 5th one from the top. So at the Pahoa Elementary admin, it's a portable building as well. It's a wooden portable. It was constructed in 1960. It's very small. It's only 12% of what's required. And the school, obviously, a portable is not large enough to house all the admin positions. So the school has decided to space them out in other areas of the school, which include 6 other buildings and 3 of which 3 are classrooms. The other example I wanted to point out is Kaivai Elementary, which is the 2nd from the bottom school. And that school's admin is in a 1956 CMU building. The CMU building is larger than a portable, but it's still only 24% of what today's standard for what an elementary size admin should be for an enrollment that goes to Kaiwai Elementary. So in Kaiwai Elementary's example, they're actually putting admin positions in 3 other buildings, of which 3 are classrooms. And I apologize for that typo. It's not 6, it's 3 in that second paragraph on the top. The last slide here, well, second to last slide, but this kind of gives you a graphical representation of the table that I went over before. So this is for Kaiwai Elementary. So how I had mentioned, the admin building is shown in red on the left-hand side, and the school is using 3 other buildings to house admin positions. Building J, Building G on the far right, and actually it's hard to see, but it didn't come out too well, but there's a little space in the cafeteria that's also being used as for an admin position. And this is just to make up for the space because the admin's too small. And again, as you can tell, Building G on the right-hand side, 3 of those spaces are classrooms. So, Kaiwai Elementary is actually going through, they're pretty overcrowded. I mean, the capacity is, they're probably right at capacity, and our projected enrollment expects about 40 more students in 5 years. So this is an example where, okay, looking at the school, the way the admin is spaced out, maybe they just need a bigger admin and not necessarily more classrooms. Because by building a bigger admin, you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone almost. You could upgrade their admin space, bring all the admin together in the same building, as well as open up the classrooms in Building G as they were originally designed. So allow the kids to be together as it was designed, and it'll keep the admin together. And also create a more, I'm sure a new admin will create a more prominent entry and welcoming point for the parents and the children. And so like I said, admin is not the only thing we're looking at. We're looking at various other programs, but that's just one example of what the data will tell us. And we'll be able to look at it not only for one school, but all the schools, so we can prioritize amongst the various programs, support or instructional. And it'll aid us in coming up with our CIP budget. We hope to be able to use some of the data that comes out for our next budget request in 2017.